So there folks, and welcome to Minecraft. We are going to have a look today at Mekanism. We are going to walk you through the 5 times ore processing, which is pretty much the core of Mekanism. Well, as you can see, it's a bit chaotic in here, so what I'm going to do is, the first thing I'm going to do is put ore in the system, and let you follow it through so you can see how the 5 times ore processing system works. After that, we'll start at the other end, which is obviously you build all this in reverse order. So we'll go back through it in reverse order so you can get a better feel for how it's all built up into this system in the first place and how like the extra bits of the system work. We'll also head outside and check out the salination plant and how to build that. Because the wiki is a little bit sketchy on some of these details, and having a visual guide is so much easier. And we'll finish up by having a quick chat about power generation as well, so you can keep it all running. So this machine over here is pretty much where the 5 times ore processing, I should say, begins. You stick your ore in here. This is using sulfuric acid to break this ore down into slurry. In this case, iron slurry. Sorry about the NEI thing in the con. Let me minimise that a little bit. There you go. It should be making iron slurry, as you can see on the screen there, and that's getting piped out. Oops, I'm typing in the box, that's why I can't move. That gets piped out into a chemical washer. This has needs to have a water supply, as you can see, that's coming in through the top. Combined with the iron slurry, it is actually churning out clean iron slurry. It's just it's doing it so quickly you can't actually see it in there, because it's piping it straight into this machine, the chemical crystallizer. The chemical crystallizer here is taking the iron slurry and producing iron crystals, of which you will get 5 for each ore block you put in. And they're just getting piped through an underfloor pipe, which leads to this chest. This chest is automatically piping into this. This is where the 4 times ore processing begins. So if you haven't got that bit, this bit gives you the 4 processing. So this machine takes in either the crystals or ore blocks, and it produces shards. It will produce 1 shard if you put a crystal in, or 4 shards if you put an ore block in. And that's getting piped up. You can just see the pipe up the top here. I'll just quickly mention it's using hydrogen chloride to do this. It's the chemical injection chamber. And that's piping them over here, which is, I think this is where you start the 3 times ore processing. It is, isn't it? Yeah. The purification chamber, which will turn an iron shard into an iron clump, or an ore block into 3 iron clumps, which is how you get your triple. And that uses oxygen. And that pipes it again, just through a standard transport pipe under the floor over to the crusher, which is where your tier 2, your secondary ore processing comes from. That gets squashed into iron clumps. Sorry, the iron clumps get squashed into dirty dusts, which are not getting sucked out for some reason. There we go, let's put that on. The crusher is a nightmare for the transport system. It doesn't seem to export all the time, which is why I have to have this logistical sorter on there, and even that doesn't always function correctly. But yeah, you've probably, if you've played any Mekanism, you've probably got this far already. So you've got your dirty dusts, which are piped straight out into the enrichment chamber, which will turn them into clean dusts, and they're just piped into a smelter, and that's where you get your final return, your ingot. Which in the case of this, for each ore block we put in there, we put in 15 iron ore. We'll be getting 5 times that back as ingots. So that's 50, 75 ingots we'll be getting from that 15 ore, which is a pretty good return. It's true it does take a lot of certain materials, iron, copper and osmium mainly, to build up to this level. But it's worth it. It's obviously, I mean, if you're playing this already, you know it's worth it, and it's fun. But that was a bit complicated, so what we're going to do now is break it down. We'll go through and look at the processes behind each of these machines, and see how you build yourself up to that sort of level. So, I mean, like, you're not necessarily going to build all these machines in the order I'm going to go through them now, but it's going to be rough approximation of the way you want to think about it. The energized smelter, first off, is just a furnace. That's all it is. It's an electric furnace. You'll probably end up with one of these pretty early on. But if you've got a hefty supply of coal, you don't necessarily need to build this first. And it doesn't use a lot of power, 50 joules per tick, smelts pretty much anything into 1 ingot, There's no sort of dual thing to it. And all it requires is power. There's no fuel requirement for it, so it's better than a standard furnace because you're not wasting all your coal. The next thing is the enrichment chamber. The enrichment chamber... Can you put ores in the enrichment chamber? You might be able to. You might get 2 dust out of enrichment chamber before putting an ore in, which would make it part of the early chain, definitely. And there's quite a lot of stuff you can put in the enrichment chamber. You'll get this machine quite early on, because you can also use it to compress redstone and coal, and various other things as well. The crusher is pretty straightforward as well. All it needs is power. Power using 8. Oh, because I've got the speed upgrade, and it probably uses 50 joules per tick, as most of the basic low-level machines do. That skeleton sound, if you can hear that, I don't know how good the volume's going to be on the video, but it's this thing. Watch when it takes the dust out. There you go. For ages I was like, where's the skeleton? I was hunting around for him. It's like, it's not there. It's just almost the exact same sound effects on this fucking sorter. So yeah, crusher, again, very simple to make. The recipe is an NEI. I'm assuming you'll be using NEI if you're using Mekanism. If not, it's on the wiki. I'm not going to go through all the recipes. And again, really straightforward to use. You can put your ores or your clumps in and it'll crush them down and make dust out of them. You'll also end up using this, like if you need diamond dust, you'd have to crush down diamonds in it and stuff like that. You can also use it to produce biomatter. If you put, you'll see I've got some wheat here, and we'll see my wheat farm outside later. You can put wheat in there and it will come out as biomatter. Because wheat's quite easy to grow and you get 4 biomatter per wheat, you can then use a machine like this, a biogenerator, quite early on, to provide power. But we'll come back and look at that when we look at the whole power chain. You can also crush other things in here. You can crush cobblestone into gravel, and gravel into sand, which means you can essentially turn cobblestone into glass using the smelter. You can also crush flints into gunpowder. No, it isn't. Is it something else? You put gravel in that thing, they come out as flints. This thing crushes flints into... It must be gunpowder, I'm sure it is. Which you will need to make sulfur with later on. And that's to make the sulfuric acid. We'll have a look at that in a moment as well. But for now, your crusher, highly versatile, and that's pretty much how you'll start the game with those 3 machines there. The smelter, the enrichment chamber, and the crusher. And for a while, that'll do you nicely. But sooner or later, you're going to want to try the triple ore processing, and that's where it starts to get a little bit more complicated. It's beyond just simple machinery. You need to start getting gases involved. The first sort of machine you need for this is the purification chamber. As you can see, our shards are going through that now to turn into clumps, but you can also put ore blocks into this to get 3 clumps, which is the start of the triple tier. It needs oxygen in order to work. It also needs 200 joules per tick, which is 4 times that of the lower tier machines. So by this point, you need your power generation up and running and ready to provide power for it. Oh god, there's like pipes everywhere. This pipe with the sort of yellowy tint to it is oxygen coming from this machine, an electrolytic separator. It sounds complicated, it's really not. I think you'll get your head around the science behind this. Electrolysis, if you remember in school, is just passing an electrical current through something to split it down. In this case, we've got water in this machine. We're electrifying that water to make it turn into oxygen and hydrogen. The hydrogen side is empty at the moment because I'm doing shit, so it's actually been piped out. It's in this white one here and it's going over there somewhere. But normally this would be full of hydrogen. And then it passes the excess hydrogen into this hydrogen tank, which is what powers my jetpack. And believe me, you're going to want one of these. And also this gas burning generator. If you ignore this pipe at the top, if you imagine I've just got these 2 things here, when you're doing the level 3 processing, you just remember you're using oxygen. So this machine is producing hydrogen whether you want it to or not, essentially. So once your gas tank is full, the excess hydrogen will go into this generator and be burned and provide power. It's not going to provide enough power to give you a positive energy gain by any means, but it avoids the hydrogen going to waste, because your other option is to use the dump valves and dump it out into the atmosphere, which is pointless when you can burn it and reclaim some of the power, because you're using 400 joules per tick for this, plus plus another 200 for this. That's 600 joules per tick. So reclaiming even 25, 50 joules per tick back, it is a saving, and in the long run, it's gonna help, you know. Especially at this stage where your power is still a problem, it's still an issue. You're going to need a lot more before you get up to the high stage. So let's go outside and take a look at this electrolytic separator. Is it nighttime? Wow, that got nighttime quick. I'll tell you what, I'll just quickly go to sleep. It's quite safe around my compound, but just so no creepers turn up and fuck it up. You guys know what it's like. So let's head out there. We're going to have a look at the electrolytic separator and how that is fed. Ignore this shit. This is just my chest and my nether portal. Down here we go. Right, over here, when I sort of wibbly jetpack over... Okay, let's hover. In fact, why can't I hover? There we go. Right. Out of my base, you can't see it because it's hidden away. There is the electrical pipe which emerges here and comes out and feeds into these things. Now, for that tier 3 processing, one of these pumps will be enough. You don't need the others until you build the salination plant, which you can just see off in the distance, which we'll come to in a moment. The electric pumps, literally all it does is pump water. It's that simple. You apply electric current, it'll pump from a water block, and out it goes. It won't pump the place dry if you spread them out nicely, because it will just regenerate the one block it's taken. You can see that happening now. It's not like Tekkit, where it'll fuck up the timings and suck all the water out and leave you with a massive gaping hole. Because I'm not using Tekkit, this is Mekanism on its own. I'm not using Galacticraft or any sort of pre-built mod pack, I've just thrown these together myself. And as you can see, it's pumping water through the pipes, and the pipe we're interested in is this one, which was the first pipe I built, which pumps straight up into there, and that goes directly into the electrolytic separator, which is a bit of a mouthful, actually. And that's pumping straight into the back of the machine. It's getting water from there, making H2O into H and O, and that's it. That'll make you your third triple tier, I guess you could call it, or processing. And then we move on to something a little bit more complicated, the 4 times processing, which is where it really gets intensive. It needs a lot of resources to get to this stage, a lot of power to power this stage. But by this point, by the time you're producing triple ingot yield, you should be doing quite well for materials. You probably want to have, or be considering a digital miner by that point as well, I would say. I certainly had one up and running at that stage. So, where do we begin? Let's start with the machine itself, the chemical injection chamber, which is the machine you'll need to produce your 4 times ingot yield. This machine needs power at a rate of 400 per tick. So, a bit of a beast. It also needs hydrogen chloride. Now, if you've been paying attention, we already have some hydrogen, don't we? We have excess hydrogen because we're not using it, because the machine over there is only using oxygen. So, your excess hydrogen at this stage, you'll want to stop burning it. And, oh hello, pigman out there, we'll go kill him later. You'll want to pipe it out into a chemical infuser. If you know a little bit about science, you've probably already figured out what's going on here. If we need hydrogen chloride, and that's your hydrogen, then surely all you need is chlorine pumping into this machine. So let's have a look at it. Hydrogen comes in on the right here. It doesn't have to be the right, you can set this up how you want it, it's not fussy. Hydrogen coming in on the right, chlorine coming in on the left, hydrogen chloride, which will get pumped out the middle and used by this machine as necessary. So the big question, guys, how do you make chlorine? Well, another electrolytic separator is the answer. You can't use the same one because obviously it'll only take in the one substance, and we're not making chlorine from water because water doesn't have chlorine in it. So what we are going to have to get is some sort of substance that does have chlorine in. And what we've got for that is sodium chloride. And that's basically what we're bringing in. It's called brine. You can just about see it. It's getting used because we've just pumped everything through the system, and my salination plant is just not big enough to really recompensate. As it's a beast. I'll tell you that much. You're gonna love this. But it will take in brine and split it down into sodium, which, as you can see, I'm dumping. At the moment, sodium has no use. It doesn't do anything. So there's no point keeping it. We're just dumping it straight out. So it will just basically just make the chlorine, which then pumps into here, hydrogen chloride, and that's your tier 4 processor. It might not look that difficult, but you do have to build a salination plant. Now, we're going to go have a look at the salination plant, and I will explain to you how it works, how it's built, what it costs. You, sir, can go fuck yourself. Thank you. That's the brine going in at the back there. If you don't know what brine actually is, it's sort of like salt water, basically. And you're going to see that sort of being built up over here. The wheat I'm growing is just for biomatter. It's not part of this. So, more pumps. The pumps all pump water. The water now is following this pipe into this fucking enormous thing over here. And then the brine's getting sucked out of this thing. Now then, it's built of 3 main blocks. The salination blocks, as you can see there. The salination valves. And up at the top somewhere, if I put my hover mode on, a salination controller. Now, it's a multi-block structure, so you're going to have to build this in a specific way. The first thing you want on the bottom layer is a 4x4 grid of salination blocks. That's 16 salination blocks, just in a flat 4x4 square. Each one of these is made out of 8 copper ingots. So if you do a bit of maths, I think that's 64 copper ingots? Or is it 2 stacks? In fact, it might even be 2 stacks of copper just to get your bottom layer in, which is pretty intensive when you think about it. That is not cheap by any stretch of the imagination. And then you're going to have to build it up as well. It needs layers, and the more layers you have, the more brine it will process, because it will have a higher temperature. You can see here, mine says height 11, multiplier 0.8, maximum 1000 degrees Fahrenheit, and it's up to temperature at the moment, 1000 degrees. The water is on this side, the brine comes out of this side, and my brine is obviously getting pumped straight out up to all those machines at the moment because we've run out of it because we're making chlorine at a rapid rate. The higher the better. I think it's got a max height of 18 and a minimum of about 5. The multiplier is determined by the biome, so you can't alter that really. So have a look around at the biomes you're in and like move it around until you get a favourable multiplier. I think deserts are the best, giving you a 2 multiplier. And the worst is I think like 0.3, at which point it's not worth doing it. You'd be better moving it to another biome and just running longer pipes. The salination plant button is what you click when you've built it to turn it into the multi-block structure. And these 4 advanced solar generators are part of the structure. It doesn't draw power from your power grid, it powers itself by these, and it requires all 4 of them. If you've tried to build one of these yet, you know it's a fucking pain in the arse. If not, let's just have a quick look at the recipe. What the hell did I type there? Advanced solar generator. 3 iron, 2 enriched alloys, and 4 solar generators. Each solar generator requires energy tablet, osmium dust, iron ingot, and enriched. So you need 16 of these. And because each one has 3 of these, you're going to need 3 times 16 of these, which I think is about 64, which requires glass panes, alloys, redstone, and osmium ingots. So you're going to need at least a stack of osmium just to get the solar panels sorted to build this structure. And then, as I said, like each one of these salination blocks is 8 copper, which is like fucking huge. I mean, look how many there is. It's insane. It took a long time, mainly just to process the ores and build these things. You're also going to need at least 2 salination valves. As far as I'm aware, these can be on any layer. I have multiples because the wiki seems to suggest that multiple valves increase the processing I don't think that's the case. I think that was just bullshit. I think what happens is the height is responsible for how much processing it does. And the valves would simply allow you to pump it out to multiple machines. So if I wanted to, I could have another set of pumps over here pumping water into this side, and another like brine outlet sucking brine off to some other machines if I needed to. I think that's all the valves are for. They're just input and output. Because it appears to be completely full of water just using the one input anyway. And that's your salination plant. It is a son of a bitch. Oh yeah, I better show you the top layer. So these, as I said, your bottom layer is a solid 16 block structure. The next layer up is a ring, a hollow ring, okay? So let's go up a bit further, and we'll just have a look. So you can see inside the beast is water. I can't quite get there because the solar panel's in the way, but you can see it's full of water inside, because it's hollow. Except for the bottom layer, it's completely hollow. And that's where the water is stored in there. The top layer, you'll see, is another ring, but without the corners, because you need the advanced solar generators. And it's also got the salination controller, so there's 7 salination blocks in that last top ring. And you can alter this structure, so I can, like, if I wanted to make it taller, I can just knock off the top layer, build it up, put the top layer back on, and just click the salination plant button. It will rebuild it with a different height and a different multiplier. Sorry, same multiplier. What am I talking about? The multipliers just drop because it's night time. It doesn't work at night. The temperature will drop because it's powered entirely by these solar panels, and there's no other way of providing power to it. You can't wire it into your system, so don't bother trying. And yeah, that's it. So you can build a small one to start with and extend it bigger later. And you can just knock all this stuff down with a regular pickaxe, as with all mechanism stuff. You don't need any special equipment. You can just do that, which is fantastic. It's one of the things I really like about mechanism. There's none of this like breaking it with a pickaxe and then it's broken and you're like, oh no, all my stuff is gone. Right, let's go have a bit of a nap and then we'll carry on. It is a bit of a big beefy thing to cover, but we're almost done. We're almost done. That, as I said, now that we've seen the salination plant, it pumps into here. It pumps the brine in, just like the machine over there pumps water in, and with time it will split that into sodium and chlorine. And this will, once we've finished, this will eventually fill up to the point where this is full of chlorine and this is full of brine. The chlorine straight into the infuser, as you can see here, and we'll have hydrogen chloride, as I said, which again is piped into the chemical injection chamber, where it is used to make either an ore block into 4 shards, or crystals into shards on a 1-for-1 basis. 400 joules per tick, as we said, and that is the 4 times ore processing tree. So, if you've made it that far, your next step is the 5 times ore processing, and that's actually not as much of a ball ache as the building the salination plant. I found that to be the hardest setup. After that, it gets a little bit easier. It just gets a little bit more intensive on the resources you need to put in. So, let's have a look at it, shall we? It's quite complicated. We're starting with the chemical dissolution chamber. You may remember at the start of the video we put an ore block in here and got slurry out, and we did that by using sulfuric acid. If you paid attention at school, kids, sulfuric acid is H2SO4. So, having a think about that, how much of that do we already have? Well, hydrogen, we've already got. And we can already pump that out. You've seen it coming through one of those electrolytic separators, so you know where that's coming from. H2SO4, oxygen, you've also seen us producing oxygen. So it's really not too difficult to see where that's going to go. The other bit is the sulfur, and that's the bit where you're thinking, well, where do I get sulfur from? If you already know quite a bit more about Minecraft, you can probably guess it involves gunpowder to some degree. Basically, putting gunpowder in here, which I've just done, we'll put it in the chemical injection chamber, mix it with hydrogen chloride, and produce sulfur. I'll just let you see that happen. Sulfur dust. Sulfur dust goes into a chemical oxidizer, okay? And what all this machine does is oxidize it. Sulfur plus oxygen, it's going to make sulfur dioxide. It's not got any in here at the moment, but I will show you it happening before too long. In fact, we can probably just take a bit of this sulfur and show you. Pretty easy machine to make, sulfur chemical oxidizer. You put sulfur in, it uses the power to make sulfur dioxide, I believe, or maybe just sulfur oxide. Let's have a look. Sulfur dioxide is what's coming in here. I don't remember if this actually does need oxygen on. Let's have a quick look under the floor. No, it's not actually taking in oxygen, so you don't really need oxygen for this machine. Presumably it just uses the oxygen in the air to do this, and an electric current. So anyway, that's pretty straightforward. A steady supply of sulfur, which you get from gunpowder. Gunpowder you can get from from crushing flints. And flints you can get from purifying gravel. And gravel you can get from crushing cobblestone. So it's actually pretty easy. As long as you've got a steady supply of cobblestone, which you can make a cobblestone generator for if you want. You feed it into the crusher to turn it to gravel. You turn the gravel into flints in the purification chamber. You crush the flints back into gunpowder. You put the gunpowder in your chemical injection chamber, which gives you the sulfur. Sulfur goes in the chemical oxidizer and gives you sulfur dioxide, which is SO2. Okay? So you're almost there. Okay? The next thing we've got is oxygen, again, from the same electrolytic converter from our tier 3. We bring that round, we're piping it in, and all we're doing is applying electrical current to that. 200 joules per tick. That one also uses 50. And that oxygen plus sulfur dioxide doesn't take a genius. It's sulfur trioxide, SO3, which you can see over here. And that's pretty much almost there, isn't it? SO3, we want H2SO4. Well, over here we've got water vapor, okay? Now, for that you're going to need a rotary condensator. Right? That's a bit of a mouthful. A rotary condensator, okay? It's getting a water supply, again, just from outside, from the same set of pumps that's feeding the other machines. And you'll see it's got liquid and gas on the sides, and that's what we're doing here. We're turning a liquid into a gas. So we are turning water, which is coming in, into water vapor. It's just gaseous water, that's all it is. Like frozen water isn't just ice, it's the gaseous equivalent. And this is in decondensating mode. There's a button here which you can switch it to go the other way. I'm not sure why you'd need to do that, but if you wanted, you can turn water vapor back into water, or any gas into a liquid. You could turn oxygen into liquid oxygen if you really needed to. I think that's mainly for like other mods. If you've got any other mods that require liquidized stuff, this can do it. But we're just using it to make water vapor. The water vapor gets piped out into here. And if you know anything about water vapor, it's still H2O. So the O becomes SO4 and the H2, H2SO4. Sulfuric acid, there you go. It's in the middle. It's pretty easy process, really. And you seem to get quite a lot of it. And you don't seem to use an awful lot of it in the system. So it supports itself quite well. The other tier, the brine, the hydrogen chloride, you'll rake through that so fast. But this stuff is actually pretty decent. As you can see, it's almost full of sulfur trioxide. And I've used probably 2 stacks of sulfur, give or take. So it's not too bad at all. And sulfur, as I said, is really easy to come by. Using the existing machines, you can just make it from cobblestone. And that's all within the Mekanism mod pack. There's nothing outside of that, so it's pretty self-supportive, which is fantastic. What else do I need to show you? The chemical washer, which we saw. Because all this machine does then is use the acid to make slurry. And this is a pretty standard chain. Again, it needs a water supply, and it's just taking it from the same pipe that's feeding the rotary condensator. Condensator, yeah, that's right. And all this does is it literally takes in water, takes in the slurry, and produces clean slurry out the other end, which is just piped straight through into the chemical crystallizer, which just literally makes crystals. Simple as, nothing else to it in that one. Very straightforward. And then I've just got that output into a chest so that it's not automatically, well, it is automatically fed in, but it gives me, it reduces overflow and allows me to like slip sulfur in if I want some sulfur suddenly and stuff like that. It gives me a bit more control rather than piping it directly into the machine. Let's just take that sulfur out and actually pop that in there, because why not? And there you go, that's your 5 times ore setup. It's really not that complicated. It's just not, there's not many places that explain it very well. And you can automate this. I mean, as you can see, I've got this mostly automated. It's not the most efficient system. Now and again, it'll run out of hydrogen or oxygen, and I'll have to flick some valves, or like, it'll run out of brine quite often, and stuff like that. But other than that, it's a pretty nice little system. And it's I can put ore in there. I can put a stack of ore in there, and it'll just get piped through. And all I have to worry about is every so often taking out a stack like that, so it can continue what it's doing. And that is it. So I'm just going to pop these ingots in here, and then we'll have a look at how I'm powering this system, because that is an issue. Power is definitely the hardest part of this. Getting up to the sort of triple system's not too bad. As I said earlier, the biogenerator early on can be very useful. A wheat farm is very inexpensive to set up. All you need is a hoe, some dirt near water, and that's it, and some seeds, and you can just start doing that. 1 wheat will produce 4 biomatter, and the biomatter, you get a pretty decent return on the biomatter. It's not that bad at all. And you can pipe that directly into your machines if you want to. Now, the best thing to do is to have a cube. If you've seen my Tekkit video, or you've played Tekkit, you remember the MFE, MFS, and MFSU. The cubes are pretty much the same thing as that. They're just energy storage. This is an advanced cube, but you could start with a smaller one when you start out. Not too hard to build, and it stores, as you can see, 8 megajoules. And it has a max output of 3.2 kilojoules per tick, which is pretty decent. This will deal with most of your stuff. I will be upgrading this before too long now that I'm at the 5 times stage, but this will see you right for quite a bit of it. And all that is it's a pretty easy recipe, and then it's just piping out into the floor, and this underfloor cable, that side goes out to the pumps. This side just goes to my charge pad and my precision sawmill on this side. And the other one goes under the floor, and it's just piped up into the bottom of every single machine that requires power. And it's that straightforward. It's receiving power on this one face here, and what this is it's just a buffer. It's just tied into a bigger energy cube, which, as you can see over here, is going down because it's night time. We're not receiving power from our solar panels, so it's actually ticking down. I haven't managed to sort out nighttime power yet. That's the hard part. It works fine during the day, but come nighttime, I'm a bit buggered. And I'll explain why when we get up onto the roof. So, I mean, the ultimate goal here is I'm going to upgrade this to the final tier of energy cube, and then I'm going to put another energy cube here, and another energy cube here, and another energy cube here. And the reason for that is it's a redundancy, because I'm producing solar power. So when this fills up, solar power is going to waste. So if I put more cubes in and start filling all those, then when it's night time, they use power from the cubes, and when it's daytime, I'm not wasting power from the solar panels. That's basically the way that I'm planning to do it. But I would say to start with, it's always worth having. I mean, I started with 1 cube here and like various things feeding into this 1 cube. It outputs on 1 face, which you can turn around with this configurator, which is really easy to build. And it outputs on 1 face and takes input from 5 other faces. So I had like my biogenerator, and later on my hydrogen generator, and some solar panels all feeding into this 1 cube. And then when I upgraded, I had them all feed into this cube instead. And that cube just acts as the buffer, which is why you can see it's got 8 there. And that means if I need to take this out for any reason, because I actually have 2 of these, the other one's in a digital miner. And what I do is when this fills up, I take it out. In which case all my machines will temporarily run off the buffer. I run over to the digital miner, pop it in, take out the empty one, come back and plonk the empty one in and start filling it up again. Which I would recommend, basically, as a way of, especially like round about the triple or tier stage, Even if you've only got red cubes in at this stage, you can do that. You can power your digital miner off red cubes without too much trouble. It just means you have to keep swapping them out every so often, and having a buffer for that really helps. You'll see I've got one bit of pipe sticking out on its own. That's because after a while I improved the system, and I realised, why am I taking this out when I can just pick up the empty one from the digital miner and stick it here? And it will just fill up with power, and then I can take it away and go pop it back in, so that I'm not interfering with my system. So that's something I've done. That's an improvement I made. The other thing that we're powering into here from is obviously the excess hydrogen. Now, just wanted to show you this at the moment. We're out of hydrogen over here because we used a bunch of hydrogen chloride to make this sulfur with, which I'm just going to stick over here for now. There you go. And when you're not using the oxygen, that machine sort of clogs up and doesn't produce hydrogen, because this machine now is full of oxygen, and so it's not producing hydrogen. Now, because I've just set this machine going, it's producing hydrogen again, but this machine had stopped. It had reached the point where there was no hydrogen left for it, and it wasn't making any because this machine had filled its oxygen tank. If that happens, sorry, just dump the oxygen side. Now what we're going to do is we're going to do this, and it's going to delete the oxygen buffer. And then when you stop doing that, it would start refilling the oxygen tank, which means it's electrolyzing, it's producing more hydrogen, and that would help that machine go up. The other thing you can do, obviously, as I've just said, is keep this machine powered, because this uses oxygen as well. Basically, as long as this is using oxygen, the whole thing works. When it's not using oxygen, like if you're just using that one machine to make sulfur, you will run out of hydrogen. And the solution to that is to just dump oxygen until it all catches back up. And it will eventually catch back up, don't worry about it. Right, so the final bit of power you're going to want to see is how I'm actually powering everything, because these two things, they're just there as a little bit of backup. Where the real gubbings of it is up here. We've got two sort of methods I tried. We've got the solar panel and the what the fuck is this thing called? Let me hop up here. Heat generator. Now, I didn't start with the heat generator. I started with the baby solar panel. These are advanced solar generators. I would highly recommend building the small solar generators. 2 or 3 of those will power your machines fine for a little bit. And you can soon enough build those up into one of these advanced generators. And one of these advanced generators will run your tier 3, you know, your triple ore processor, your purification chamber, your electrolytic separator, and a digital miner as well. You'll be fine with one of these. But the goal is to build up to 2 of these. And by the time you hit the 4 times processing, you want to be like thinking about 3 or 4 of these. The heat generator, apparently on the wiki, what it does is it produces 100 joules per tick per side, which is fucking amazing. However, in reality, it produces 25 joules per tick, even though I've got every side surrounded by lava. So it's a complete and utter failure. I don't know if it's broken in Mekanism version 7, which is the version we're running in. I don't know if it's been massively nerfed, if it's just fucked up, but it seems to only produce 25 joules per tick instead of the 500 it should have been doing. So it's worthless, so avoid it, basically. It's not even worth the materials of building it. I'm not sure why it's so shit. I expected it to be a lot better than that. You can actually put lava in this, and it will produce lava that way. It'll produce, you know, you can put buckets of lava in and it'll produce power, but it's not a particularly good ratio. And as I say, I don't know why it's not producing what it's supposed to do on the wiki. Maybe they changed it, because the wiki seems to be largely based around Mekanism 6. It doesn't seem to have been upgraded since Mekanism 7 came out. But as you can see, it's not working. It's not doing what it's supposed to do. It's surrounded by lava on every side, as promised, even the underneath. You can see there, it's underneath as well. And it's just not doing it. It's not producing 500 joules per tick like it's supposed to. Bit of a disaster. So what I have got instead is these advanced solar generators. They are producing 600 per tick, supposedly. In reality, I think it's actually 300 per tick, because it never seems to fill up the buffers on these. So I suspect it's only outputting 300. which means where's the other 300 going? Got no fucking idea. The power generation seems to be massively nerfed. And that's a problem. I mean, you can edit that if you've got access, if it's your own server or if it's just a single player thing. You can just edit the text file and change the values if you want. I wouldn't edit them too much. I think 600 per tick for these would be high enough, and 500 per tick for your lava generator, because it wasn't easy building this. It was a pain in the arse. And I think that should be outputting 500 really. I don't see any reason why it shouldn't. And that would put it on par with a solar generator. So yeah, if you're going to edit them, don't edit them too high, because it will just spoil the fun if you have too much power. But even this setup, as you can see, is during the day it's fine. As you can see, look, it's going up during the day at a pretty decent rate. But as soon as it goes to night time, if I've got all the machines running, it just sucks through that pretty quickly. Which is why I'm going to build a better buffer. If you've got enough of a buffer in place, which I will have before too long, I'll build a couple more cubes and then just like stand around and let those fill up to 32 megajoules, which is what this goes up to. And then they'll never use a full cube during the night is the way I'm looking at it. So either way, I'm never completely run out of power. So that's going to be great. And that's it. That's the full sort of mechanism. I mean, there's more to it than that. There's loads more machines that you can play with. There's one over here we didn't even look at, the osmium compressor. There's the precision sawmill. There's some machines that make substrates and plastics, which I haven't started playing with yet, but that's the next thing I'm going to mess around with. But these are all the machines that were involved in the ore processing side of things. So there you go. That was my little visual guide, walkthrough, tutorial thing. And I'll see you guys some other time. So bye-bye.